What are you saying about that pattern of briefing then? Sexist? Misogynistic? What's going on?
All of the above.
Let's talk to Louise Haigh in her first broadcast interview since resigning as Transport Secretary. Welcome to Newsnight. Less than a year after that landslide victory, your landslide victory, in your view, what is going wrong for Labour?
Well, I don't think we can underestimate how catastrophic those results were last week for the Labour Party. As Nick just said, they were existential for the Tory party, but I believe they should be existential for the government's current course of action. And for those of us that were out on the doors, for activists, the consistent message that we've had from there, but also from polling and from focus groups, is that people don't really feel that we're taking the action to address the issues that matter, whether that be on the cost of living, the public services, or on the economy more widely. And that's very frustrating. As I wrote in the Times at the weekend, I had a conversation with a man in Runcorn who simply would not accept that this Labour government were committed to renationalising the railways. I passed the legislation to make that legally required of all my successors, so it was extraordinarily frustrating that he hadn't heard that.
So is it the content or the comms?
I think there's a problem with both. I think the unpopular decisions are overshadowing the good ones. I think this Labour government has a lot to offer, whether it be the Employment Rights Bill, the increase in the minimum wage, the massive investment in our NHS, but people have heard the winter fuel allowance and the welfare cuts overwhelmingly. Your
Labour colleague Jo White, who represents Basset Law, said the decision to mean test winter fuel and take it away from 10 million pensioners has become Labour's poll tax problem. Do you agree?
I think it did become totemic. I think the nature in which it was announced on its own as almost a sole policy meant that it wasn't part of a package that was clear about what it was for. And I think that's why so many of my colleagues from across the political spectrum of the Parliamentary Labour Party are calling for that economic reset.
Right.
And I think we've got that.
So do you want Labour, just so I'm absolutely clear, do you want Labour to reverse those winter fuel cuts? I don't think they're going to. Do you want them to? Should they do?
I don't think it is completely necessary. I think we can move on from the winter fuel allowance.
You just said it's become totemic.
Yeah, but I think if we have an economic reset at the comprehensive spending review and an economic strategy combined with a political strategy that really starts to show people that we're on their side, then I think we can move forward from it. At the moment, the current strategy means, with our fiscal rules combined with these self-imposed tax restraints, that we're going to keep coming back to these kind of decisions time and time again. And I think that's what really frightens Labour MPs, knowing that it's not just the winter fuel allowance and the welfare cuts. We're going to have to keep coming back to these decisions over and over again.
OK. Did you oppose the winter fuel cuts when you were sitting around the Cabinet table?
Those conversations were, obviously private, and I won't discuss those conversations that were around the Cabinet table.
But if you had opposed them, you'd probably be telling me now, wouldn't you?
I'm not going to disclose private Cabinet conversations.
Will you vote against the welfare cuts when that comes up, as Nick has just been reporting that Scottish Labour MPs will be doing, because that is apparently the loyal thing to do now?
Well, look, I'm worried about the proposals as they stand, not least the impact assessment that has shown that tens of thousands of children will be pushed into poverty.
So will you vote against?
We don't yet know exactly what is going to be in front of us, but unless the position changes, I think it's unlikely that I'll be supporting those.
OK. Does that mean abstaining or voting against?
Well, we don't have a clue. I don't know whether it's going to be secondary primary legislation, so it's not clear what to say yet.
OK. An economic reset, what does that mean in specific terms?
So we've repeatedly ruled out a wealth tax. I think that is the wrong thing to do, because it does, as I say, mean that we will keep having to come back and make these difficult decisions over and over again, like cutting public spending and cutting money from the people who can least afford it. I believe there are options on the table, like an asset tax or a land tax, that could mean we could change that position permanently. I mean,
on wealth, on assets, Paul Johnson, director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, says that while a 2% wealth tax on those with net assets of over 10 million could raise a noticeable amount of money, no country in the world has succeeded in a wealth tax that's brought in significant amounts of money, serious amounts of money.
I think it needs to be properly explored, though, doesn't it? Just because no other country has done it. You know, there are other forms of, there are other options on the table, be it a land tax, be it proper reform of council tax that hasn't been reformed since the 90s. We just cannot continue down this path that means, as I say, we keep coming and raiding those people that can least afford it.
I want to ask you about the culture in Number 10, because you have talked about a culture of male advisors briefing against female cabinet ministers. What do you mean?
Well, I'm just really fed up of opening the papers and reading briefing against my female former colleagues, and I was really angry at the weekend to see the response to the electoral defeat that we had suffered at the hands of Reform to be that we should sack 2 female Northern cabinet ministers and 2 of our best communicators with those voters that we need to communicate with most. I think that does reveal that there are people working in Number 10 that are more interested in those kind of politics than they are about running the country.
But are you saying they're briefing against them because they're women and Northern and working class?
I only ever seem to read briefing against my female former colleagues.
What about Ed Miliband?
Ed does get briefing, that's absolutely right. I wouldn't say that he gets it anywhere near as badly as my female colleagues do.
OK, so what are you saying about that pattern of briefing then? Sexist, misogynistic? What's going on?
All of the above. I think there is a real problem where there are people that, as I say, that are more interested in that kind of politics than they are in rolling their sleeves up and getting with the job of running the country. That is not motivational to cabinet colleagues that are working really hard to try and deliver for the people of this country. And you know, the kind of briefing that undermines them on a daily basis is not supporting the Prime Minister, and it's not supporting the Labour government.
It's the first interview you've done since you resigned as Transport Secretary. Let me ask you about it. You resigned after it emerged in the newspapers that you'd pleaded guilty to a fraud conviction a decade or so ago, which Sir Keir Starmer knew about and appointed you to the shadow cabinet and then to the cabinet when Labour won the election. So why did you have to resign? Well,
look, I know politics is a real rough old business, and those headlines were horrible. They were horrible for me, they were horrible for the government, and I didn't want to stay on for the sake of my ego and put the government through that. I care too much about it, and I care too much about my colleagues who are trying to do a really good job at the moment, and then I didn't want to detract from that, so after my resignation it was accepted. Was it suggested to you that it would be better for you to resign? Look, I'm not going to sort of play out those internal conversations. I recognised it was the right thing to do, and I went in those circumstances.
And one more question, if I may. In 2013, you told police that your work mobile phone had been stolen when you were mugged. Later, you found the phone in a drawer at home. You didn't tell the police you'd found it, hence the fraud offence. Why didn't you just tell them? I know, it was a really stupid mistake. I genuinely thought it had been stolen when I had my handbag mugged, and when I later found it, I didn't correct it. And believe me, Victoria, I've regretted it every day since, and I hope viewers will recognise that I have more than paid the price for that mistake. Thank you very much for talking to us on Newsnight this evening. Louise Haigh, thank you.